Hi, everybody. Welcome to our HPS Employer Panel Zoom. My name is Noelle Bassi, and I am the Internship and Study Abroad Coordinator here at the Harrington Center at Colby Sawyer College. And Jen Tuckman is also with us as well. I think she may have stepped out a second. Oh, she's right there. So, and she's the director of the Harrington Center. And I'm really excited to have four great presenters with me today to talk about their career tracks and how they got into their whole career. So the first person, I'm going to read all their bios right now, so listen closely. The first person that's going to present is Bernard Norte-Botchway, and he's a counsel at the Bank of America's Global Trade and Export Controls legal team. He deals with various matters involving trade agreements, export laws, sanctions, and anti-boycott. Bernard supports client-facing and control function partners around the world. Bernard also serves on the bank's Legal Diversity and Inclusion Business Council, which is the DIBC. Prior to becoming a lawyer, Bernard worked for a bipartisan group on fiscal policy in New Hampshire, DC, and Iowa. He also spent time as a summer associate at an international law firm in Seattle and a global bank in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bernard is active in the broader legal community as a member of the American Bar Association, North Carolina Bar Association, and the Mecklenburg Country Bar. He helps coordinate the Mecklenburg County Bar's diversity clerkship at the bank. Bernard is a strong advocate of pro bono and volunteerism and was recently inducted into the 2019 North Carolina Pro Bono Honor Society. Bernard is a guest lecturer at the UNC School of Law focusing on in-house practice. So please welcome to Bernard. Bernard is also a recent CSC grad as well. Kelly,
yes.
The second presenter, is the Director of Digital Assets and Photo Archivist at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. She has a BA in English with a minor in history from the University of Vermont and an MA in English from Boston College. An MS in Information Sciences tops it off with a concentration in archives management from Simmons University. Before working at the Baseball Hall of Fame, she was the college archivist here at Colby Sawyer College. In Kelly's spare time, she enjoys dancing, crafting, and spending time with her dogs. And finally, we have Nick Charlante, who's also a CSC grad. Nick Charlante served as a Deputy Chief Operating Officer at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the ODNI, where he was responsible for aiding in the strategic management of the ODNI, including corporate governance, financial operations, information technology, security and counterintelligence, and talent management. Nick began his career on Capitol Hill as an intern before joining the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence in 2015. He holds a Master of Professional Studies in Legislative Affairs from the George Washington University and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Colby Sawyer College. And folks, we also have Greg Waite here, who is a representative from the Washington Internship Institute. You may have heard about other presentations about this. It's a great program that is directly relatable to your major here. And we offer that in Harrington Center. You can come and talk to us about opportunities within the Washington Internship Institute. And at the end of the presentation, Greg is going to tell us even more. So everybody, please welcome our great presenters. And without any further ado, I'd like to get started with Bernard.
I hope everyone can hear me okay. Great. So thank you all for having me here today. It's a flashback since I took this class myself with Professor Boyer, so it's always fun to be back. I'm currently at Bank of America and the Global Export and Trade Controls Group. A bit of my journey to get there, because reading off is one thing, but hearing the actual journey is a whole other different thing. When I was at Colby Sawyer, I did my first internship at a group based in Ghana and Accra, Ghana, called Financial Accountability and Transparency Africa. So it was basically a think tank, civil society kind of group that was involved in policy. I'd always had that interest in politics and policy with international flavor to it. So I'd naturally track towards places like that. After college, right after I graduated, in fact, I think 2 years after I graduated, the college's lawyer at that time linked me for some friends who suddenly offered me a job to work for them, doing bipartisan work around the elections, concentrated on fiscal policy and how that translates into the various platforms of various candidates. So it was a great job to have, because I was meeting everyone from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama when he was out there, to Jeb Bush, and so much so that I was in political ads and people would call me up and say, hey, you're in an ad in Massachusetts. So that was fun. I finished that and went up to get my JD at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. When I was at Chapel Hill in law school, you have to do a number of internships before you graduate, basically on-the-job training, because law school is nowhere near long enough. So I was first a clerk for a high court judge in Ghana, because again, you can see the connection I have with the country with and then I worked for Credit Suisse, which is an international Swiss investment bank. I worked with them to get some more experience. I worked with Lane Powell, which is a law firm based in Seattle, and I worked for Bank of America as well, all whilst I was in law school. So my area has always been internationally focused. So I did things with international loan agreements. I worked in deals related to Venezuela. And if anyone follows the news, Venezuela is usually a hot topic because of the various sanctions and US relations with Venezuela. So I did that. After law school, I was at a crossroads. I received job offers from various organizations, and either one could have led me in a different way. So if I'd gone with one, I would have been in DC working for the World Bank, doing things like that. If I'd gone with the other one, I'd be with an international law firm doing, basically what lawyers do every day, bread and butter lawyer work, and enjoying that as well. But I've tried to find a nice mix in the middle, which was Bank of America for me. And I didn't even know lawyers do what I do right now until I actually got to the bank and realized this thing existed. What is global trade and export controls? So I joined the group, and I've been there ever since. I think some of the greatest bits of information that helped me along my way was conversations I had with professors at Colby Sawyer, who really encouraged me to follow my passion and to go for it. It might not be what everyone else was thinking, because loads of people in my history class, my political studies major at that time, wanted to be teachers, or do something else with it. But I wanted to be a lawyer, and so lots of encouragement that way. So that really helped, get where I wanted to get to. Yeah, so that was my journey to where I am right now. So I'm open to specific questions anyone would have going forward about my path to answer it. I want to make it more of a dialogue than me ranting on.
Quick question, Noel. Do you want to do questions all at the end, or do you want to do questions for each person? You're muted right now.
Go ahead, and if students have any questions while the presenter is speaking, they can put it in the chat, and the presenter will answer the question as they become able to.
Okay, the only slight hiccup there will be that there's only one computer here, so I'm writing out so we maybe want to give a couple minutes after each presenter just so that I can get questions if there are any.
Absolutely.
If questions come in, I'll put them in the chat and we can sort of open things up at the end. That will work for you?
Yeah, that's fine, Eric.
Can I ask, Bernard, can I ask you one quick question? When did you know you were interested in the more financial side of the law when you applied to law school, or was that an interest you discovered in law school?
No. When I applied to law school, I knew I was interested in the international aspect of law. So little did I know how broad that really is. You hear international law and you think specific thing, but it's one of the broadest areas of law you could possibly imagine. So I had no clear interest in that. I think it was through my internships and conversations I had with practicing lawyers that really helped me narrow my focus and decide where I was going to go. And I'd say there's nothing that would beat that conversations and mentorships with people like that, because you gain insights and gain opportunities that I usually would not get. Yeah, so I had no idea what I do now existed, in fact, so until I got to law school.
And then just one quick follow-up. This is an intro class, so I've got some first-year students, some second, some third year, and I got a whole lot of majors. So some psych, some undeclared. Could you just speak a little bit about what a student that's interested in the law might be doing now? Maybe if they're only 19, right, and they're thinking about the law school, what kinds of things would you recommend they do?
They could be doing anything as long as it's analytical. So, for instance, you will notice that when you get to law school, that there's a huge proportion of history, political science, and philosophy majors, because those majors usually tend to skew towards writing and thinking analytically a lot, which is a key part of law school. I will tell you now, you read more than you ever read before, you write more than you ever written before, and you have to think very critically about things. It's huge, so that's down. But you do realize there are lots of people who have science backgrounds, because a big part of law is intellectual property, and who better to understand things related to intellectual property than people who can invent and think scientifically about things. So we have those people over there. We have people who did nursing, exercise science, you name it, you find in law school. The key requirement for law school would be, if you can write, have a passion for reading, because you're going to do a whole lot of that, and thinking outside the box. They say when you get to law school, your first year, what they do is they break you down and build you up, because you have to think in a whole different way, different from how you think usually. And it's true, because you go read things from when you first got to law school, and you read things the way you write now, and you realize it's a vast difference. So as long as you're passionate about going to law school, it doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as those basic skills and you're honing it and you're working hard on them.
Bernard, I'm wondering, in the chat I put, what class at CSC made you decide that you did want to become a lawyer? Was there a certain point that you felt like this is my future?
I wouldn't say a certain class focused my desire to be a lawyer, but I'd say a certain class did focus or made me realize that I was naturally good at convincing people and and negotiating and coming to compromise, which is a big part of law school, being a lawyer, being especially the kind of lawyer I am. And that would be a class I actually took of Professor Boyer, where I was leader of the fascist party, and I was supposed to get some sort of handle on power, and it was quite interesting, being the only fascist in the room. Not by choice, I was assigned this, and I I had to make the best of the bad situation. So it was an interesting dynamic, relating to various classmates and trying to put myself. Yes, I was the most civil fascist ever. Put myself, in a position where I could gain some amount of power. So yes, there are some classes that influenced my thinking about what my natural skills and what my natural gifts were, and I think that's important, especially considering that I came to Colby Sawyer as a pre-med major, who quickly switched to being a psych major, who then very quickly again switched to being a HPS major. So I went to two transitions before I got to where I was. Yeah.
Thank you, Bernard. Eric, how are you doing?
I am really good. Actually, quick question, Bernard. You were the class of 2015, am I right? Or
yes, class of 2015.
2015, okay. I've got a question from Eric here. Yes.
How does he handle the financial situation of law school? I've been looking at it, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming that just the financial.
Bernard, could you mention quickly about the process of paying for law school? Because I think many of the students that are thinking about law school, they see that sticker price, and it's overwhelming to think 3 years with incredible. So could you talk a bit about sort of keeping yourself financially afloat while attending law school?
That's a very good question. That's a very important consideration for anyone considering whether med school, law school, any of the professional schools. It's a very important consideration, the dollar sign. For law school, I would say the best way, I'd say, is to get scholarships to fund it. There are lots of universities have merit-based or need-blind scholarships, so you just have to read into that, see how you fall into it and how you qualify for it. I use myself as an example. So after I wrote and do well on the LSAT. So the LSAT is a law school admission test. That's how you get into law school. It's a big part. Some schools are trying to change it and use GREs and with your GPA, but most schools still, for scholarship purposes, they still use the LSAT, whether they admit it or not. So in my case, I wrote the LSATs, and that was my big push. That was where I did really well. Applied to various schools during my junior year, actually. I wrote during my junior year, applied to various schools, and started hearing back the fall semester of my senior year. Then came the decision time. Do you go to a place just because of the name, because it's called this school, or do you go to a place where you can afford, where it's equally ranked, the top 50, where they call in law school, call it T1 schools, or the top 50 schools, where, you go there, you're guaranteed connections and, work opportunities, and people coming to school to recruit you, which is all very important when you go to law school. So I made a decision to go to a place which is affordable, and it would give me lots of aid money. So then I wouldn't have to carry a huge burden once I got out of law school, because law school, you're right, can be very expensive. Especially if you go to a good school, you're doing your first year, you're not allowed to work, because the workload of being a first 1L law student is so heavy, and it's so new to you that if you try to work any number of hours, usually you end up tanking and not making the grades necessary to keep afloat, so you're not allowed to work. So you think about where you're going. If you can go to a place where you can live from home and go to law school, do it. Especially if it's a good school. Do it, completely do it. There's no shame in that. You're trying to save as much as possible and try to reduce that cost as much as you can. If you know you want to go to a state school, let's say I went to UNC, if you want to go to UNC, what some of my friends did, which I didn't even know about, thankfully I got enough scholarship to cover it, but you move to the States for maybe 6 months to, I think, a year, and you become a resident over there. So then suddenly you're getting a resident tuition tag, which is so much less compared to what someone out of state would be paying for law school, which is fantastic. Also you can do things like apply to independent scholarship funds, especially if you qualify, be it through minority, through affiliation, through church, through your mosque, wherever it is that has a connection that could possibly provide you some financing, go for it. The lower your cost of attending, the more opportunities are open to you. I have friends who were very interested in going to law school, which they did. However, they didn't do any of the things I'm talking about, and they ended up paying full sticker price. They come out and they're trying to do public interest or go into the government, but the cost of education is so heavy, the loans are so much, they have to go to a private law firm and make 6 figures so they can pay it off quickly. So that skews them from where they want to go when they have to go do that for a while before they come back. So if having that financial freedom is so key to actually doing what you want to do once you come out to law school. So find any way, choose your schools carefully, think of what you want to do at the end of it, and is it necessary to go to this one school only to get it done? Is that the only place where you can go? And apply for scholarships. Apply. You never know which one might pan out. Just let the money come in, and then you pay for it the best way you can. Reduce it to the least amount you can. And like I said, this applies to law school, med school, pharmacy school, whatever one you decide to go to. I see a question here that's Colby Sawyer for the LSAT. I don't know about now. When I took it at that time, no, the LSAT wasn't offered on campus. And it was funny because my LSAT, I was in a class, I had to go right to the American Embassy. It was raining, I lost my umbrella, I was freezing, I got into the room, the air conditioning was on, it was not fun. So I don't know Colby Sawyer offers it now. I think Jennifer Noel might answer that. I don't know if we do, but there are lots of testing centers available to do it.
We do have a testing center. Okay, Eric says the closest site is Concord. We do have a testing center on campus, and that's a question you could pose to them, as well as we have books on with the how to study for the LSAT in the library too. So.
And I think if there's interest generated too, it's something that they can look into. Doing more. I don't know that we get so much a demand for them to take on doing that additional test, but that's a good question. And if students are interested, let me know, because we can share that with them too.
Excellent. And if the books are available and you think you're taking the LSAT, absolutely, use it. My strategy back then was solving, I think it was 50 questions, in the morning, 50 questions, and in the afternoon, 50 questions at night. By the end of it, you're so honed into it, and then you get there. The LSAT is not easy. I will diffuse any notion that you can just show up and take it. No, you can't. It is tasking. It will take something out of you. So the more prepared you are for it, the better off you are.
Great. Well, thank you, Bernard, or Bernard, sorry for that mispronunciation. I appreciate that. Let's move on to our next panelist, Kelly Bogan, if you would like to take the helm.
Sure, thanks, Noelle. So I will say that I am different than Bernard and Nick in that I did not go to Colby Sawyer, but I worked there. I also didn't go to a smaller school. I went to a bigger school. So I will say I did not have a Harrington Center. I did not have close relationships with professors. So that is something you really have at Colby Sawyer that's unique to going to a smaller teaching school as opposed to like a research university. And so it's something that's great for you to take advantage of while you are there. I am also not a history major. I was a history minor and an art history minor and was an English major. And I will say my path to becoming an archivist was not direct. I did not know what I wanted to do as an undergraduate. I think that's totally okay to not know. And I just assumed I would go on, get a graduate degree and probably be a teacher because that's what English majors do, right? Or that's what you're told you do. Or you do that or you do publishing. Those are kind of the options you're kind of laid out with kind of in the world without some guidance to give you alternatives. So I went to graduate school to get my English degree. And while I was there, in one of our required classes, we did a trip to the archives at Boston College, which is where I was getting my degree. And we did a tour. And on this tour, one of the librarians, archivists there, pulled a book off the shelf and just sniffed the spine and was like, yes, 1742, and then like put the book back. And I was like, what is this job? This is clearly the job that I want in my life. Whatever job involves sniffing a book spine and knowing what date it's from is for me. So that is when I decided to ditch going to be a professor. I was already in a PhD program and I was like, no, thank you. I'm gonna go get my library science degree with a concentration in archives management and to go down that archives path. Archives is a job that English majors tend to go into and history majors tend to go into. It's a job that really focuses on preserving history. So we are all about making historic documents, whether that is paper, photographs, or video, accessible for researchers. So that would be for your history professors, for people writing books, any of those kinds of scenarios. I did internships while in my degree at the Thoreau Institute in Concord, Massachusetts. I also worked at Boston College in their archives, the one that gave me my journey. And I did an internship at the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. After completing those internships and getting my degree, I then took the job as the college archivist at Colby Sawyer College, and I was there for 8 years. And then I decided it was time to do something new. One of the things that is great about archives is that when you get bored with an archives, like you know everything about, I could tell you everything about the Cleveland family still, and the Colgate family and everybody connected to the college. If you feel like you know everything about your institution or feel like you've exhausted your time there, you can move on to a new archives and a new collection of materials and learn something entirely new. So you can constantly be learning as an archivist, which is really fun. So I moved to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 2016 and started there as a photo archivist. And then in 2018, I also became the director of digital assets, which means that I care for the institution's digital collections and making sure that our metadata is complete, making sure everything has gone up appropriately. We are currently in the process of migrating to a brand new system mid-pandemic. So we've been frozen in our old system for just about a year now. We're hoping to get into the new system this summer. So it's been a big pandemic project for all of our staff. And yeah, I'm happy to talk more about specifically what archives is and a path for you. I'll also say I have 2 remote employees who are Colby Sawyer alums, who were my students back in the day at Colby Sawyer. So there are definitely internships and other ways to get in if you're interested in learning more about archives. And I see, what is the most interesting artifact you've worked with at the Baseball Hall of Fame? Oh, that is such a hard question. So we have weird things and we have cool things. Weird things, we have hair. We have a surfboard, or we had a surfboard on loan. That was an interesting, it was Chipper Jones's surfboard. Whose hair? We have Babe Ruth's hair, and we have Christy Mathewson's, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. We have a few different people. We have like your standard baseball bats and gloves and whatnot, but we also have like pianos and kimonos and teeth and just like oddball things. So it's a weird mixture of what you would expect to be at our museum. We have one of my favorites actually, which isn't really weird, is it's a champagne bottle that was enclosed that was used to christen a boat named for a ball player. So we have the like crushed champagne remnants inside the protective case. So kind of things that you would think people would throw away that end up with us to care for and that tell an interesting story.
Kelly, I think I particularly appreciate the circuitous route you took to where you are. And I think like, you know, because we have a 100-level class here with us. And I think that is really good to hear that, you know, where you start isn't necessarily where you end up. And, you know, a history major, liberal arts major can take you a lot of different places. And this is where you ended up. And I think that's a great thing to make sure that's in the minds of all of our students. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I always tell my interns that whatever you do, it's gonna help you in life down the road. You might get an archives degree and decide that's not what you want to do with your life, but that archives degree will help you in some other capacity down the road. Your whole journey is going to inform your life.
I want to give Eric's class a few minutes to see if they have any. So yeah, in the meantime. So you started as the photo manager, is that correct?
As the photo archivist, yeah.
As the photo archivist. Okay, and was that just managing mainly digital assets, right?
So as the photo archivist, I was responsible with my staff for all of the photographic materials at the museum. So that is negatives, daguerreotypes, photographs, digital images, all of that. So that's caring for them in terms of putting them in acid-free enclosures and boxes and things to protect them, but also digitizing them to make them available to the public.
And then at each step in your career, you obviously learned more about the trade and more about so what have you taken? Like, is this the ultimate, is there anything next for you, do you think? Or what's next?
There's always definitely going to be something next for me. I actually almost left the museum 2 years ago when I was still just photo archivist to go work at NYU, but I decided to stay because I was actually offered the digital assets position at the same time. And I decided my time wasn't done at the museum. But I am a baseball lover, maybe not as much as other people who I work with. I didn't quite realize how much of a fanatic I wasn't until I got there. But there are so many topics that interest me and so many things that I'm interested in doing that I know I will move on to a different institution where I don't know, but something will come up. And I also do a lot of volunteer work because I like to be very involved in the profession. So I volunteer with the Northeast Document Conservation Center. I'm involved in the Society of American Archivists. I'm involved in the regional chapters for archives. So yeah, I want my profession to move forward, and I'm dedicated to my craft, maybe to an obsessive level.
I think that's fantastic. Now you shared that you have some interns. What sort of things do your interns do?
Yeah, so we have a summer internship program called the Frank and Peggy Still Internship Program. That's actually what I was a part of when I was a graduate student. And I unfortunately think that this year's round closed at the beginning of February. But that is a summer internship that we do every year that's open to undergrads and graduate students, and it's across all aspects of the museum. In addition, I have my remote employees who are former Colby Sawyer students. They are doing metadata work for us. So basically we give them a batch of photographs and then they have to describe what is happening in the photographs. And that description and that content that they create will end up in our online system.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Are there any other questions from students that are not in the class, just online? I don't want to rush anybody, and I've sort of been taking things over, so I just want to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to ask Kelly any questions. Okay, well, we will have more time after Nick's presentation if anybody thinks of anything. So thank you very much, Kelly. And Nick, if you want to hop on.
All right, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. So a little bit about my career track. So as a student at Colby Sawyer, I was a business administration major. The political studies program was just developing when I was a student there. So I was able to minor in political studies as a student. But as a student, a business administration student, I did an internship the summer between my junior and senior year, as all students are required to complete an internship. And when I was talking with my business faculty about interning, Professor Chris Kubik asked me why I had not been a part of WII, which Greg will talk about afterwards. And my answer was simply because I was involved with too much at Colby Sawyer, I didn't want to give anything up. But talking with Chris Kubik, and then the resources available at the Harrington Center, I was able to take advantage of the summer semester at WII and interned the summer between junior and senior year in the fall or the summer of 2013. So that's how I got my foot in the door down here through WII. Worked with them to get an internship placement. Greg's predecessor, Mark, who was the president, was my internship advisor. So worked with him throughout the entire process to land an internship. One of the things that even now, 7 years down here in DC, one of the things that whether it's your first time applying to a job or 7 years later down here in DC, the process can be a bit frustrating and discouraging. The hardest thing is getting your foot in the door. I think for my original internship back in 2013, I probably applied to 10 to 15 different organizations. Some you just don't hear back from. And then, these offices are receiving hundreds and hundreds of applications. So you just ultimately don't hear from some, or unfortunately, depending if you're applying to a member office, they'll prefer people from their state or district if possible. So started as an intern in 13, and then after graduating from Colby Sawyer, came back to Washington, D.C. to go to graduate school at George Washington, where I obtained a Master in Professional Studies in Legislative Affairs. So building upon my minor from Colby Sawyer for my graduate degree. Also began an internship in 2014 while I was a full-time student. And I started in the office of Congressman Devin Nunes from California. And I saw there was a question about how I got my foot in the door there, because obviously I'm not from California, I'm from Massachusetts. So that was sort of the oddball, not being from the state or the district. But the resources I was looking at that point, and still we're using just a little while, there are a bunch of other there are a bunch of employment bulletins. There's resources, Daybook, Bratcherverse, House, Senate employment bulletins, not endorsing any. But there are many, many resources, and those were all resources that I was using. And you found the internship application on one of them and applied at that time. After interning in his office through May of 2015, I joined the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which is known as HPSI, as a staff assistant, and then became the chief clerk of the committee and then the executive director, where I was responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the committee. So I was responsible for managing a staff of 45 and operating a $6.5 million budget, as well as ensuring compliance with House rules and all the different obligations that we have working for Congress with public disclosures, et cetera. I was at HPSI through May of last year, and in the middle of a pandemic, I actually changed jobs for a short period of time, where I went to ODNI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, to be the Deputy Chief Operating Officer and run the organization there. I was the number 4 in a cabinet level organization. And in the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, it's all the day-to-day operations. So it's managing the budget of ODNI, managing the personnel, managing policies, operations, and just being the buffer between the actual front office, the director's office, and the workforce. So we would implement actions from the director. We would bring concerns from the workforce to the director. And that was a wonderful experience. It was a challenging experience in the midst of a pandemic, trying to ensure that the mission essential functions of ODNI were continued, especially given the limited abilities to work from home in a job like that when you're dealing with national security information. So in January, after leaving ODNI, I took a little time to myself, because I've been working since the age of 18. So I took some time and thought about what I wanted to do next. And actually, I was sworn in last week, and will be joining HPSI again as of tomorrow, but in a different capacity from where I was before. So now I'll be working more on the oversight policy role. I'll be the programmatic and budget monitor for 3 of the accounts that we have, as well as being an advisor to our members for their weekly reader production. So we make a production for our members, similar to how the president gets the president's daily brief. We make a weekly brief for our members. So I'll be responsible for working on the members' weekly briefs for their intelligence. Networking tactics. Here in DC, the easiest way to get your name out there is networking. When I was an intern, I was always meeting with different people, and then asking if they knew anyone that they thought I should meet with, and then reaching out to them and just building my network. Even now, as I've been here for 7 years working in DC, I continue to do that as well, because the network is ever growing, and where what I might do next, that network will help me at some point. But I think I don't want to take up too much time, and I'll leave room for Greg and questions.
Nick, can I just have you speak a little bit more about that? Because I think that's the thing that many of our students struggle with the most, right? I think, especially from my own perspective, thinking like as a first generation college student, I didn't have those skills from when I was young about how to build that network. So could you just speak a little bit about what is that like? Because I think you're right. It's those connections. But as a person who went to DC without those kinds of connections, what kind of recommendations would you give to someone who really wants to get into DC but thinks it's just too difficult because they don't know anybody?
Sure. So I would say the first thing, everyone now knows at least one person in DC, and you can use me as that person to open the door. When I first came down here, I had zero connections in the political realm on Capitol Hill, or you know, in the door. So I was starting a bit fresh. But I used, once I got my first internship, used the connections that I made in Congressman Nunes's office to build that network. So the LD, our legislative director, or the chief of staff would introduce me to someone that they knew, and I would meet with them. And then they, the person I would meet with would say, "Oh, I know so-and-so who has a common interest with you. Would you like me to introduce you to them?" Everyone down here is always, I feel, always sending introductory emails, where I'll send an email to, say Sally and Joe, and say, "Hey, Sally, this is Joe, a friend of mine. He has a common interest in baseball, is interested in working on the Hill. Hope the two of you can connect at some point." I can't tell you how many of those emails that I've been included on as someone being introduced to, or being introduced of, or of me sending to someone. So I think that's the hardest thing is the networking. But once you get that first foot in the door, it gets easier.
Yeah, I wanted to underscore that too, Nick, the fact that every opportunity is a networking opportunity, especially where you are. And I totally appreciate that. As well as something else that stuck out to me during your talk was just your persistence. It's not, you can't let one no just tear you down. You got to just keep at it, for sure. So, and then the more you know, the more opportunities you have, and the more persistent you can be. So all that is tied together.
Right, and I'll say, even just to jump onto that point real quick, even over the last month, as I've been applying to different jobs, from December to about last week, I've applied to 15 different jobs. I have a spreadsheet of everything of when I've applied, and it gets frustrating, because as I'm moving things down into the it didn't hear back category, or they decided on a different candidate, it gets frustrating. And I think that's the thing, that you just don't let that knock you down, because there is something out there, and a lot of it is about timing as well. Going back to how I got my first internship in Congressman Nunes's office in 2014, they had an internship posting that was posted on one of the job banks, and I was just lucky enough at the time that no one else from California applied for an internship. No one else from his district applied for an internship, but they needed an intern to do the basic constituent services of a congressional office. So it was just a good luck timing there.
Absolutely. I just want to make room for any of Eric's class's questions.
I have a question. You're talking about Eric, the basic services of constituent service. Yeah. Nick, could you just elaborate really quickly on what that was like? What kind of work were you doing in Representative Nunes's office? And this might be good for my intro to American politics students as well. Like, so much of what representatives in the House do is that kind of constituent outreach and constituent service. What kind of work did you do in your internship with Representative Nunes?
Yeah, so as an intern, in many offices, you're the first point of contact between anyone calling the office and the office. So as an intern, you're answering the phones, providing resources to people who call. So they may call up and say, I'm having an issue with the IRS. All the offices have, a way in which they handle casework. So, if someone calls up, I'm having an issue with the IRS, you can say, okay, we have so-and-so who handles our casework. The resources that are available to you are X, Y, and Z. If you would like us to help, we'll need, X, Y, and Z from you, so that we can get the ball rolling to help you. I was giving tours of the Capitol, still one of my favorite things to do. So if anyone's here in DC, happy to give you a tour. Processing American flag requests, going to legislative briefings for staffers or with staffers, writing policy papers, summaries, and then actually responding to constituent mail. So all of the correspondence that comes into congressional offices are answered one way or another. So as an intern, that's a great experience because you actually get to write letters back to constituents who have sent the congressman, the representative, a letter.
And Nick, it's safe to say, right, that Representative Nunes would agree that is what gets him reelected. More than any kind of policy position, it is, did you follow through with that IRS concern? Did you help me get that American flag? Did you respond to my letter? That is the real work that really dictates whether a representative gets reelected or not.
Yes, I would say every member would agree with that.
Okay, are there any students? Go ahead.
Really quick, I just want to get Nick on record that this is a standing I will have coffee with Colby Sawyer students invitation. I've been assuming this is correct and sending students your way. Is this a thing that I can continue to do, Nick?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The pandemic was sad last year because I didn't have any visitors. My last Colby Sawyer visitors were in 2019.
Hopefully we can get more your way soon, Nick. Any students that aren't in Eric's class that are on that have a question, happy to field that one as well. But while we're waiting, I just want to quickly say thank you to all three of our presenters. I feel like for our students, this provides a really good, I think it provides a lot of inspiration in terms of where this major can take them and what a liberal arts degree can do for these students. So thank you all very much, Kelly, Bernard, and Nick. And right now, what I'd like to do is introduce Greg Waite from the Washington Internship Institute and let him talk a little bit about his program.
So first of all, Kelly has my dream job. As a fellow English major and an enormous baseball fan, I am so incredibly jealous of her. So Kelly, if you have an open position for anything, please let me know. I will drop this like immediately. So thanks for having me. I'm president of the Washington Internship Institute. We're a nonprofit that works with colleges like Colby Sawyer to help students find internships here in Washington, D.C. Before I start talking about the specifics of the program, just a little COVID update. We've been online since this all started, so we're going on a year now. And we anticipate that our summer internships will also be online. Nick can correct me if I'm wrong what he's sensing on the Hill, but I really don't think that we're going to be back in person until fall at the earliest. Maybe we'll be able to go hybrid at some point in the summer, but we're seeing all of the postings being online internships for this summer. But throughout this, we still have had students take advantage of our housing and live in our apartments because they wanted to experience as much of DC as they could during this time. So we start everything off with a conversation with you about what your interests are, and then we do research to find opportunities in Washington that will match those interests. So we'll come back to you with a list of 5 or 6 places, get your feedback, and then once we both agree on options for you, then we help you prepare cover letters and resumes to apply to those opportunities. And then we sort of help you the rest of the way through the application process. We help you prepare for interviews and then make a final decision once you've received some offers. Our students intern at a really wide variety of places, and we work with students from almost every major. I like to sort of put them into 3 buckets of kinds of internships, obviously with the federal government, as Nick said, on Capitol Hill, but also we've had students in the past couple of years at the White House and the Supreme Court, and with numerous departments and agencies. The majority of our students, though, probably intern with organizations here in DC seeking to work with or influence the government in some way. So things like think tanks or lobbying groups or advocacy organizations based on issues or industries or areas of the world or country. That's probably where the majority of our students intern. And then we also have students at local DC nonprofits if they want more of a hands-on, on-the-ground approach rather than a national or international organization. When you come to DC, ideally, you'll intern 4 days out of the week, and we work with our partners to make sure that you're not just doing clerical work, but actually substantively contributing to the organization. The other day of the week, you take 2 classes with us. One of those classes is focused on reflecting on your internship experience and helping you prepare for the next steps in your career by building career skills. The other class that you take is on policy issues, either international and foreign policy or US politics and policy. And in that class, you hear from people who do that kind of work in DC, like Nick, but also, again, ideally go out and visit places where that work happens. Like I said, we have apartments that you share with other students in the program, and then we have activities throughout the semester so you can get to know Washington. I'm going to put in the chat our website that we have for Colby Sawyer specifically, which outlines the credit and billing situation. But basically, you earn a full semester's worth of credit from Colby Sawyer during the fall and spring semesters, and your financial aid travels with you.
Yes, what Jen is saying. If anyone has
Yeah,
any questions. Also, what are some of the, what's the typical cost, Greg? And what are some of the inclusions? Are there any cultural activities that are included in that?
Yeah, so I mean, again, your Colby Sawyer package is basically what you pay to attend our program. There are going to be costs involved with, food and entertainment, and there's going to be costs with transportation, getting here and also using the metro once you are here. But we usually have 5 or 6 activities throughout the semester at least. We go to a Nats game. When we could do this, one of my friends at the Kennedy Center took students on a backstage tour of the Kennedy Center. Things that we think students will be interested in. And we also work with other programs in Washington to do larger like volunteer activities and things like that. So.
Greg, could you just briefly speak a little bit more about, because from my vantage point as a faculty member who had multiple DC internships, the biggest issue for me that students might not realize is housing. Could you speak a little bit about the housing? Because, and then, if you didn't go through with the Washington Internship Institute, what would be an amount that they would be expected to pay for short-term summer housing? Because it's been a while since I was seeking that out.
Yeah, but I always like to tell students about how I sublet a furnished studio when I first got here before I found a place that was $2,900 a month. So Washington, D.C. is not a place that you really want to deal with housing very much. Right now, it's actually a renter's market, but I'm actually in a new apartment and I don't have anything on the walls. It's really challenging to find housing in Washington, D.C. that is and so we take care of all of that. So they're 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartments. They're located in Crystal City, which is just outside the district, but an easy metro ride into the district. It's a safe, secure building, an area with lots of stores, restaurants, and bars nearby. So it's, we highly recommend that students take advantage of our housing just for ease of mind for the most part. But it also is a financial consideration because we have students all the time who say, oh, I'll just find housing on my own, and it ends up being a lot more expensive or just not as nice and reputable. So unless your Aunt Mary lives in Bethesda and you can crash on her couch, I highly recommend students take advantage of our housing. Yeah, and as Jen says, like this is I'm talking in generalities, but it's what we always recommend is that you talk to the Harrington Center about how the program will work specifically for you in terms of credits and in terms of the billing situation.
Good advice. That's fantastic. I want to leave a little space for anybody to formulate some questions that they may have. But Greg, you shared your contact information. Thank you for that. And Kelly, Nick, and Bernard, if you wouldn't mind sharing yours as well in the chat so we can have that for the students, that would be great. So they can make some of their first contacts in whatever areas may interest them, which we have quite the diverse array here. So I like that. And just thank you for being here again.
I think we might be all good for question-wise on my end.
All right, well, I think we are done here. Again, thank you to everyone. Appreciate your time. And to the students, I hope that you did gain some inspiration from all of this. And thank you also to Eric and Randy and Steve for, passing this on to all the students and, getting them excited about it. But hope everybody has a great day, and thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.